Inside the hangar at New York's JFK Airport, a tense crowd of engineers circled a giant, gleaming jet engine, resting on a wheeled stand. Open tool carts stood nearby, their tools untouched. A clock on the wall ticked too loudly. A towering, elegantly dressed woman in a crimson suit checked her watch again, her face a mask of frustration. Engineers wiped sweat from their brows. Security watched the doors with keen eyes. Then a deep, resonant voice cut through the noise. "If you permit, I will fix it." Heads snapped toward the open hangar door. A young, dark-haired man stood there in a tattered jacket, his hair wild from the wind and cold. He looked thin, as if he hadn't eaten in days. Grease stained his hands. But his eyes, bright and steady, looked only at the engine. Laughter broke the tension. "Are you joking?" a bald engineer named Adam asked, half smiling, half tired. Adam was a jet maintenance veteran. He had worked on private jets for 25 years. "We've been at this for 6 hours. One of his engineers shook his head. "Who let him in?" "Security," another called out. "Please take him out." 2 guards stepped forward. The woman in the crimson suit, Alexandra Vance, billionaire CEO and owner of the sleek Gulfstream G550, parked outside, raised her hand. "Stop." Her voice was calm but strong. "In my line of business, I have seen unusual things. Let the young man speak." The guards froze. The man took one more step. "Madam," he said, his eyes still on the engine, "I heard your team say there was an unusual noise during landing, like a whistle. Then the engine ran rough and wouldn't spool properly after shutdown. May I look?" Adam's mouth opened in surprise. "That is exactly what happened," he muttered. Alexandra studied his face. The hangar buzzed with the distant hum of generators and the faint smell of jet fuel. Outside, cars cried over the runway. Inside, no one breathed. "Give him the gloves," Alexandra said. A ripple of shock moved through the team. The guards stepped back. Someone handed the man a pair of clean gray gloves. His hands trembled for a second as he slid them on, and then they didn't tremble anymore. He moved to the engine with quiet confidence, checked the intake, ran his fingers lightly along the sensor harness, and listened as if the metal itself could whisper its secrets. He crouched by a small panel near the compressor section and tapped it gently. "Do you even know what you're touching?" a young engineer asked. He didn't answer. He reached for a flashlight and a small mirror. His face drew close to the open panel. "There," he said softly, "that clamp is wrong. It's tight, but it's on the wrong groove. That makes a tiny air leak. The leak sings like a whistle under load. And here," he traced a wire. "This sensor wire has a small crack in the insulation. It's rubbing against the bracket. When it heats up, it tells the engine the wrong thing. The system tries to correct, and the engine feels rough." Adam blinked. "How could we miss that?" "Because both problems hide each other," he said. "The leak makes the sound. The bad wire makes the engine act sick. If you fix only one, you still see trouble." Alexandra stepped closer. "Can you fix it?" He looked up at her, then at the tools. "If you permit," he said, his eyes holding hers for a long second. "Do it." The hangar changed. The team shifted from doubt to watchfulness. The man's hands moved fast and neat. He loosened the clamp, reset it into the proper groove, and tightened it to a clean click. He trimmed and rewrapped the sensor wire, laid a sleeve over it, and tied it away from the metal bracket so it wouldn't rub again. He cleaned the area and checked it twice, then a third time. He worked like someone who knew engines the way a musician knows a song. Adam leaned forward, his mouth open. His lead engineer whispered, "Boss, he might be right." "Time?" Alexandra asked without looking at her watch. 17 minutes, someone answered. The man straightened. Sweat dotted his forehead. He pulled off the gloves and set them carefully on the cart. "I'm done," he said. There was silence. Adam took a slow breath. "We'll test it," he said, trying to sound firm. But his voice had changed. There was respect in it now. Alexandra nodded once. "Roll it out." The crew moved quickly. The engine stand clicked and rolled across the polished floor. Outside, the afternoon sun poured gold over the tarmac. A ground cart was hooked. Cables were joined. Safety cones appeared. The team spoke in short, careful words. The man stood back, hands clasped, watching everything, ready if anyone asked for him. "Who are you?" Alexandra asked quietly, stepping beside him. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes glistened, but he blinked the wet away. "If the test goes well," he said softly, "I will tell you my name." She studied him for a heartbeat, then gave a small nod. Adam and his team finished their checks. He looked up at Alexandra and gave a thumbs up. Alexandra returned it and walked to the control cart herself, the tail of her suit sharp against the Sunday. She placed her hand on the starter switch, but paused and glanced back at the man. He stood very still, the wind lifting strands of his hair. In his eyes was something fierce and quiet, like a small flame refusing to go out. "Everyone clear?" Adam called. Cones were checked again. Lines were clear. 2 mechanics moved to safe positions. The warning beacons began to spin, blinking red across the white wing of the Gulfstream. The airport air felt thinner, as if the whole of New York held its breath with them. Alexandra rested her thumb on the starter. The clock on the hangar wall ticked once, loud as a knock. "Here we go," she said. She pressed the button, and the world around the engine leaped to life. A low whine rose faster and faster. Numbers climbed on the small screen. The whine deepened into a smooth rush, and then a sharp alarm chirped. Adam's head snapped toward the panel. A single red light blinked. The sound wavered. Every face turned to the man in the torn jacket. He took one step forward, eyes locked on the engine, and lifted his hand as if to say, "Wait, listen." The hangar felt frozen in time. Every mechanic, every engineer, every guard, even Alexandra Vance herself, waited to see if the engine would roar to life or choke. The warning light glared red, casting a faint glow across the metal surface. The sound of the jet engine wavered, rising and falling as though caught between working and dying. The man, though no one yet knew his name, stood with his arm raised. His voice cut through the panic. "Don't shut it down. Not yet. Listen carefully." Adam scowled. "Are you crazy? A warning light means danger. We could damage the core." "It's not the core," he interrupted firmly. "It's just the sensor recalibrating. I rewired it. The system needs a moment to accept the correct reading." His words carried a calmness that startled everyone. Alexandra's sharp eyes shifted between Adam and the young man. She had run billion-dollar companies long enough to know when someone spoke with authority, and he did. "Hold it steady," Alexandra commanded. Her voice silenced all doubt. The whine of the turbine grew smoother. The red warning light flickered once, twice, and then turned green. Gasps rippled through the hangar. The engine's hum transformed into a steady, powerful rush. The sound of perfection. A Gulfstream jet engine was alive again. Adam staggered back. His face turned pale. One of his engineers dropped his wrench. Another muttered under his breath, "Impossible." Alexandra's lips parted, eyes widening in disbelief. For 6 hours, her best men had battled this machine, sweating, swearing, failing. And in under 20 minutes, this homeless man, this stranger in a tattered jacket, had done what none of them could. She turned slowly toward him. "What is your name?" Her voice was almost a whisper, but the hangar carried it like thunder. The man swallowed hard. Tears welled in his eyes, but he stood straight. "My name is Jonathan Williams." The name meant nothing to most of the engineers, but Adam's face dropped as though he had been struck. "Williams," he breathed. "From the university." Top of your class, you're him. Murmurs rippled across the hangar floor. They had all heard the stories. The prodigy who had dazzled professors, the young man destined for greatness in aerospace, and then nothing. He had vanished 2 years ago, as though the earth had swallowed him whole. Alexandra's sharp gaze never left him. "Explain," she said softly. Standing in the glow of the still spinning engine, Jonathan's voice cracked as he spoke. 2 years ago, my father, a pilot, was wrongfully blamed for a near-fatal incident caused by faulty equipment. He tried to clear his name, but the company covered it up. He lost his license, his reputation, everything. The stress destroyed him, and he died of a heart attack. I was about to begin my dream job with one of the best aerospace firms in the world. But when he died, I shattered. I couldn't face life. I canceled my interviews. I threw my phone away. I wandered until I lost myself completely. I ended up on the streets, begging to survive. The hangar was silent except for the engine's hum. Even Adam bowed his head, ashamed of how he had mocked him minutes earlier. Jonathan's eyes burned with tears. But every day I passed this repair center, I would stare through the fence, remembering the future I lost. And today, when I heard your voices, when I saw how helpless you all were, I thought, just once, let me try. Even if I get thrown out, even if people laugh at me, at least I will not have died with my dream still locked inside. Alexandra's throat tightened. For the first time in years, tears threatened her eyes. She was a woman used to boardrooms, contracts, and numbers. Yet this young man's honesty pierced her more deeply than any speech. Adam's voice cracked. You saved us. You saved her." He pointed toward Alexandra's Gulfstream jet gleaming outside. "We would have failed." Alexandra stepped closer, her polished shoes clicking against the floor. She placed a hand gently on Jonathan's shoulder. "You didn't just fix my engine. You reminded me why second chances matter." She turned to the crowd. "You all saw it. Remember this moment. Greatness is not about appearance, not about titles. It's about truth, skill, and heart." And today, this young man had all three. Jonathan trembled, unsure if he should bow or step back. But Alexandra wasn't done. "Jonathan Williams," she declared, "from this moment on, you will never beg for food again. You will never walk these streets homeless again. I will personally make sure the world knows who you are." Gasps and applause broke out among the engineers. Adam himself clapped, though tears blurred his vision. Jonathan covered his mouth with his hands, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a cruel memory. It felt real. Alexandra glanced at her watch. "I need to be in London in 6 hours, and I am not going there without you." His eyes widened. "Madam, you fixed my jet. You fly with me." The hangar erupted again. Adam whispered to his team, "He's going to London. On that jet he saved." Minutes later, Jonathan stood outside the hangar, staring at his reflection in the jet's polished surface. For the first time, he didn't see a beggar. He saw who he was always meant to be. But as he touched the cool metal, his heart raced with fear. Could this truly be happening? Or would it all vanish like a dream? Behind him, Alexandra's voice broke the silence. "Get ready. The world is about to know your name." And as Jonathan climbed the steps into the private jet, none of them knew that his story had only just begun. The Gulfstream jet's cabin gleamed like a floating palace. Cream leather seats curved gracefully around polished wooden tables. Gold-toned light spilled from the ceiling, soft but powerful. Jonathan sat stiffly near the window, his tattered jacket and tangled hair looking terribly out of place in this world of wealth. He kept his eyes on the runway lights outside, blinking against the tears he couldn't hold back. He had dreamed of sitting in a plane like this once, when his life still made sense. Never had he imagined he would be here, not as a passenger, but as the savior of the very machine that carried them skyward. Across from him, Alexandra Vance leaned back with the ease of a woman used to commanding the world. But her eyes never left Jonathan. She studied him the way a historian studies a rare, forgotten book. "You worked on my jet like someone born to fix it," Alexandra said finally, her voice steady over the hum of takeoff. "Tell me the truth. Where did you train?" Jonathan swallowed. "The university, ma'am. I graduated top of my class, the only student to score distinction in aircraft maintenance." Alexandra raised her brows. "And yet here you are, in a torn jacket, hungry." His face burned with shame. He dropped his gaze to his hands. "Life tore me down. After my father's death, nothing made sense. I lost the will to fight." For a moment, silence hung in the cabin, broken only by the steady thrum of the engines. Alexandra reached into the compartment beside her and pulled out a small velvet box. She placed it on the table between them. "Open it." Jonathan hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside lay a gold locket, simple yet radiant, etched with the initials AV. His lips parted. "Ma'am, Alexandra raised a hand. "This locket belonged to my late mother. She believed in lifting people who had fallen. I am passing it to you tonight, because I believe you are not meant to live on the streets. You are meant to lead." Tears filled Jonathan's eyes. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He closed the box with trembling hands. Alexandra leaned forward. "Tomorrow in London, you will meet executives from JVC Jet Maintenance, the very company that once offered you a position. I will introduce you as the man who saved my Gulfstream. They will listen." Jonathan's heart stopped. JVC Jet Maintenance. He had dreamed of that moment 2 years ago, before his world crumbled. He had cut them off, buried his future under grief, and now, like a miracle, it was returning. "Ma'am, what if they laugh at me?" he whispered. Alexandra's sharp gaze softened. "Then they laugh at me too for believing in you, but I doubt they will. Your gift is too rare." The plane steadied at cruising altitude. A hostess appeared, bowing respectfully. "Dinner is ready, ma'am." Alexandra motioned to Jonathan. "Bring him clothes." The hostess returned with a sleek black suit that shimmered under the cabin lights and a small case of toiletries. Jonathan's mouth fell open. This is for me?" Alexandra nodded. "You will not walk into tomorrow's meeting in rags. You will walk in as who you are meant to be." For the first time in years, Jonathan smiled through his tears. He disappeared into the cabin's restroom. When he returned, the room seemed to change. His hair, neatly washed and combed back, glistened under the lights. The suit hugged his slender frame, simple yet elegant, turning him from a homeless man into a king. Even his eyes looked brighter, as if hope itself had polished them. Alexandra rose to her feet, stunned. She had seen models in Paris, actors in Hollywood, business leaders in London, but never had she seen a transformation this powerful. "You look," she said quietly, "like destiny itself." Jonathan laughed softly, shyly. "I don't feel like destiny. I just feel like me again." Dinner passed with quiet conversation. Alexandra asked about his childhood dreams, his professors, his love for engines. He spoke with passion, his voice coming alive as though a locked door inside him had opened. When the meal ended, Alexandra leaned back, her eyes unreadable. "Jonathan, when this jet lands, you will have a choice. You can walk away and disappear again, or you can step into the life you were born for. Which will it be?" His hands gripped the armrest, his breath shaking. He remembered the nights on the street, begging for bread, the days he walked past Adam's repair center, staring at the life he had lost. And now this chance, a door opening he thought had been sealed forever. His voice broke, but his words were firm. "I will step into it. I will not run again." Alexandra's lips curved into the faintest smile. Good. As the jet sliced through the night sky, Jonathan turned to the window. Below, the lights of cities glimmered like constellations. He thought of his father, the tragedy, the injustice, the pain. For the first time he felt they were no longer chains around his neck. They were shadows behind him, and he was walking into the light. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I will not waste this chance." But what Jonathan did not know, what even Alexandra could not guess, was that destiny had more in store for him than a job. A storm was waiting in London. Secrets, decisions, and someone who would soon change his life in ways he could not imagine. As the jet soared higher into the dark, Alexandra adjusted her watch, staring thoughtfully at Jonathan. For the first time in years, hope flickered in her own heart too. Yet deep inside her, a voice whispered, "What if I am wrong about him? What if he fails?" And Jonathan, though he tried to stay strong, felt his stomach twist with the same question. What if tomorrow destroys me again? The Gulfstream cut across the Atlantic sky, carrying two people whose lives were about to collide with fate itself. The wheels of the Gulfstream jet kissed the runway at London Heathrow Airport. Just as dawn painted the sky a pale orange, Jonathan pressed his palms against his knees, trying to calm the storm inside him. Every breath he took felt too heavy, every thought too loud. He had told Alexandra he was ready, but now that the moment was here, fear clutched his throat like iron. Alexandra, sharp as ever in her crimson suit, noticed. She leaned toward him and spoke softly. "Remember, Jonathan, skills speak louder than appearances. Don't try to impress. Just be who you are." The car that whisked them away gleamed black against the wet streets. London's skyscrapers reflected the rising Sunday. Jonathan's eyes darted between the city outside and his own trembling reflection in the tinted glass. This is it. No more running, he told himself. By mid-morning, Jonathan found himself standing inside a high-rise tower of glass and steel, the headquarters of JVC Maintenance, Repair, and Overhaul International. The boardroom was wide, the ceiling high, its walls lined with screens displaying aircraft schematics and glowing numbers. At the far end of a long table sat a group of executives in dark suits, each with expressions sharp enough to cut glass. One woman, with gray hair and thin glasses, adjusted her tie and looked directly at Alexandra. "Mrs. Vance, we've waited 6 hours for this meeting. I hope you have a good reason." Alexandra's voice was calm, commanding. "I do. I bring you Jonathan Williams, the engineer who repaired my Gulfstream jet after your competitors failed." Whispers rippled across the table. A man in a blue blazer raised a brow. "That boy." His eyes swept Jonathan from head to toe, lingering on his black suit. "He looks untested. Is this some kind of joke?" Jonathan's chest tightened. He clasped his hands behind his back to keep them from shaking. Alexandra's tone sharpened. "Do not judge by what you see. Judge by what he can do." The gray-haired woman leaned forward. "Very well, Mr. Williams. Mrs. Vance speaks highly of you. But skill in a New York hangar is not the same as skill at our international level. Tell us, what exactly did you fix on her jet?" Jonathan drew a breath. This was his moment. The compressor section clamp was secured on the wrong groove, creating a leak that produced a whistling sound under load. At the same time, a sensor wire's insulation had cracked. The wire was rubbing against a bracket, confusing the system and making the engine run rough. Either issue alone would be hard to find. Together, they disguised each other. That's why the repair team failed. But engines talk. You just have to listen. The whistle was air, not core. The rough spool was information error, not damage. Fixing both gave the truth back to the machine. Silence fell. The executives stared at him. One of them, an older man with silver hair pulled into a bun, tilted his head, impressed despite himself. "That's correct." The woman in glasses frowned. Anyone can memorize a manual. Alexandra's jaw tightened, but Jonathan raised his hand slightly. May I? He asked. The man in the blue blazer gestured toward the screen on the wall. Go ahead. Jonathan walked to the screen where a digital schematic of a jet engine spun slowly. His fingers hovered over the controls. Give me a random failure scenario, he said. The woman in glasses smirked. You're bold. Very well, she typed quickly. The screen blinked, and a set of numbers scrambled. A warning light flashed red beside the virtual engine. Jonathan scanned the data, his eyes narrowing. This isn't the turbine or the fuel line, he murmured. It's a vibration sensor giving false high readings. Either the sensor is loose, or the calibration offset is wrong. He tapped a few keys, isolating the problem. See? The vibration pattern doesn't match physical stress. This is software echo. Recalibration will fix it. He turned back to the boardroom, steady and calm. If this were real, I'd check the mounting first, but I can assure you the engine itself is fine. The red warning light disappeared. The screen confirmed. Sensor calibration error resolved. The room went still. The man with the silver bun spoke first. He's right. His voice carried weight. Perfectly right. The woman in glasses leaned back, her face pale. Alexandra allowed herself the smallest smile. Now, do you see? The blue blazer executive crossed his arms. We can't deny his brilliance. But brilliance alone isn't enough. Running a branch requires discipline, leadership, and resilience. Alexandra stood. Her voice filled the room. Jonathan has all three. He survived losing his father and his family's honor. He endured homelessness for 2 years, and yet he still carries his knowledge like a torch that refused to die. If that is not resilience, what is? The woman with the silver bun nodded slowly. Perhaps it's time we stop underestimating men like him. She turned to Jonathan. Mr. Williams, if we gave you the New York branch, our biggest operation, what would you do? Jonathan's heart pounded. He looked at Alexandra, then back at the executives. I would turn it into the most profitable branch in the world. Not for pride, but to prove that no tragedy, no circumstance, can bury true potential. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the woman in glasses sighed, setting down her pen. Let him try. I can't deny what I've seen. The man in the blue blazer pursed his lips but gave a curt nod. Finally, the silver-haired man smiled faintly. Welcome to JVC Jet Maintenance, Jonathan Williams. From this day forward, New York is yours. The words hit Jonathan like thunder. Tears blurred his vision. He bowed his head, whispering, Thank you. Alexandra's hand pressed gently on his shoulder. You've earned this. But as they left the boardroom, Alexandra's phone buzzed. Her face changed as she read the message. Lines of worry creased her brow. Jonathan noticed. Ma'am, is something wrong? Alexandra's lips tightened. It seems not everyone is happy with this decision. There may be opposition waiting in New York. Jonathan's stomach dropped. After finally stepping back into the life he thought he had lost, was someone already plotting to tear it away? The door to the future had opened, but shadows were waiting just beyond it. The flight back to New York was different. The Gulfstream jet hummed with pride. The same engine that Jonathan had saved was now carrying him into a future he never thought possible. Alexandra sat across from him, her phone buzzing endlessly as she arranged details for his appointment. Jonathan should have felt victorious, yet unease shadowed his heart. Her words in London lingered. There may be opposition waiting in New York. When they landed, reporters crowded the tarmac. Flashbulbs exploded, cameras whirred. News had already spread that a homeless man had achieved what trained engineers could not. Alexandra shielded Jonathan with her arm as security guided them through the crowd. Inside the newly built New York branch of JVC Jet Maintenance, tension thickened the air. The hangar gleamed with fresh paint. equipment neatly arranged, and staff lined up for introductions. But beneath the polished welcome, Jonathan sensed skepticism. Adam was there too. Alexandra had invited him to witness his first steps as head of the branch. His face carried respect now, but also guilt. He had laughed at him once, and the memory weighed on him. The regional director, a striking black woman named Camille, stepped forward. Her handshake was stiff. "So, you're the young man from the papers," she said, her voice flat. "I must admit, I find it difficult to accept that someone so inexperienced will head our largest operation." Jonathan met her eyes, steady, despite his racing heart. "Judge me not by where I have been, but by what I can do," he replied quietly. Murmurs rippled through the staff. Some looked impressed, others remained unconvinced. Barely a week into his leadership, the challenge arrived. A high-profile client's private jet reported severe engine trouble just before an international flight. Panic swept through the New York branch. Failure would ruin their reputation before Jonathan even settled into his role. Camille folded her arms. "Let's see what the miracle boy can do." Her tone dripped with doubt. Jonathan swallowed his fear. "Bring the aircraft in." The jet was towed into the hangar. Mechanics gathered, whispering. Jonathan walked around the engine, his fingers brushing the metal as though listening for a heartbeat. He closed his eyes, recalling the years he had spent in classrooms, the books he devoured, the passion that never died. "This isn't a fuel problem," he said after minutes of silence. "It's a faulty bleed valve. It sticks open under load, which bleeds away air the compressor needs. That's why it stalls." Adam stepped forward. "He's right. He didn't hesitate this time. I saw the signs too, but he explained it before I could." Camille scowled. "Fix it then. If you fail, this branch fails with you." With steady hands, Jonathan led the repair. He directed the team, teaching as he worked, showing them the logic behind every step. Within hours, the engine was tested and roared back to perfect life. The client, stunned, shook his hand personally and promised to spread the word of his brilliance. For the first time, the New York staff erupted in cheers for him. But Jonathan noticed Camille in the corner, her jaw tight. Her pride had been wounded, and wounded pride often led to dangerous schemes. That evening, Jonathan sat alone in his office. The cheers of his team still echoed faintly in the hangar, but his heart was heavy. He had proven himself again, yet the look in Camille's eyes warned him that she was not done. A knock came at the door. Alexandra entered, her face warm with pride. "You've done more in a week than many do in years. New York is alive under your leadership." Jonathan smiled faintly. "But not everyone believes in me. Just not yet," Alexandra said. "Envy is louder than applause. But trust me, you've planted something no enemy can uproot." Before Jonathan could reply, another knock came. Sophia stepped in. Alexandra's daughter was shorter than he expected, with a gentle smile and eyes that studied him with quiet intensity. She had returned from London after completing her MBA, ready to resume her role as company accountant. "So, this is the Jonathan I've been hearing about," Sophia said softly. "The man who fixed my mother's jet and now commands New York." Jonathan blushed. "I wouldn't say command. I just try to listen to what the machines need," Sophia chuckled. "And people too. I think you listen better than most leaders." Over the next weeks, their paths crossed often. Over dinner at Alexandra's mansion, late nights balancing figures in the office, quiet talks on the balcony overlooking the New York skyline. Sophia's calm presence soothed Jonathan's fears, and Jonathan's fire inspired Sophia in return. It wasn't long before whispers began. Staff noticed the way Sophia's eyes lingered on Jonathan, the way his smile lit up around her. One evening, after a long day of reviewing contracts, Sophia invited Jonathan to the balcony. The city sparkled below, headlights weaving through streets like rivers of light. She turned to him, her heart pounding. Jonathan, you came into our lives like a storm. You fixed what others couldn't fix. Not just engines, but hope. I don't want to imagine a life without you. She knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. Inside lay a diamond ring that caught the light of the city. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down Jonathan's cheeks. For years, he had been invisible, broken, homeless. Now here he stood, chosen and cherished. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Yes." Months later, New York witnessed a wedding, unlike any other. The cathedral glittered with flowers and chandeliers. The who's who of the city's elite filled the pews. Reporters packed the steps outside. Alexandra herself walked Jonathan down the aisle, her hand firm on his, her eyes shining with tears. "You were once a man in rags who fixed my jet," she whispered. "Now you are my son." As Jonathan reached Sophia at the altar, the crowd rose. He spoke his vows with a voice that carried strength and humility. "I lost myself in the tragedy of my father's life. I slept on the streets with no hope. But one day, I dared to say, 'If you permit, I will fix it.' That moment changed my life. Today, I am not only the head of New York's largest jet maintenance branch, but I am also marrying the daughter of the woman who gave me a second chance. This is proof that no darkness is too deep for light to find us again." The cathedral erupted in applause. Alexandra wept openly, holding her hands to the heavens in gratitude. A year later, Jonathan cradled his newborn son in his arms. Sophia stood beside him, smiling proudly. They named the boy Joshua, after Jonathan's late father. As Alexandra held her grandson, tears streamed down her cheeks. She had built empires, flown across continents, and commanded industries, but nothing compared to this. A family restored, a legacy continued. Looking at Jonathan, she whispered, "You were the answer I never saw coming. My life is complete." And Jonathan, once a homeless man in rags, now smiled through tears of his own. He had found his place, his purpose, his love. The man who once begged for scraps was now a man whose story inspired the world.